Hello and welcome to this We're Eurovision vlog. I don't have a script for today, and this is actually my third time trying to film this video. I've had technical issues with both of the other videos. The first time, apparently, I didn't actually have enough space on my phone. Second time, my phone that I'm filming off of decided to die halfway through filming after I'd cleared off enough space. Obviously, something wanted me to film it again. It is Thursday night and Eurovision semi-final 2 happens on Friday morning, so I'm cutting into my sleep time to record this before semi-final 2 so that I don't accidentally start putting in content that should be in semi-final 2 into this section of the video. Obviously, with the time frame that I'm working with, I can either stay up all night and get this video out just before semi-final 1 is done, or I can start editing this and then kind of get it finished and then immediately record semi-final 2's video and just release it as a double video. You're watching a double video. That's how that went. Editing me here, I forgot to record this part, so let's talk about it. I kind of just want to start talking about the general production of the show, and I'm kind of going to get into the songs and the qualifiers and all that at the end. I always find what a country does with, say, its interval acts or other things like that. I always find that kind of content fascinating as well. I'm just going to start with the hosts. Hazel and Sandra, I think, are phenomenal hosts. To me, personally, I think I love Hazel's hosting style a little bit more than Sandra's. It's kind of Hazel's dry Swiss humor that's really getting to me. Even in the first little bit of the contest, I was like, oh, okay, this girl has a little bit of a dry sense of humor. I kind of am curious as to how much it kind of jives with me, because I know that in myself, I actually have a fairly dry sense of humor. On that aspect, I personally think that my favorite host is Hazel. That's not to say that Sandra is a bad host either. I definitely feel like a pair of hosts for the semi-finals actually works fairly well. I found that last year as well. Last year, definitely, only having a pair of hosts through the show never felt clunky or wrong. So it's actually good to see them work with two really good hosts. I don't have a problem with any amount of hosts until you start getting to too many. But I found that Hazel and Sandra's chemistry really remarkable for Eurovision hosts. You don't get this all the time. The next notable thing is to talk about the interval acts. I found that actually this year's semi-final 1 interval acts were really good. There is a problem with getting into nostalgia baiting all of the time. Yes, it's great to see Eurovision records, but we did this a decade ago. Quite a lot of the Eurovision records were the same ones that we saw in 2014. Obviously, a couple of them have changed, like Moldova's Longest Note. Obviously, that's a newer record, but the thing is, a lot of the highest hats and stuff like that, we saw this. We saw this when Copenhagen hosted in 2014. Either I've been following the contest for too long, or there could be better, more innovative ideas for some of the VTs that come up in the contest. It's actually great to see stuff like the turquoise carpet get a little bit of airtime in the show proper. Obviously, there's going to be some nations where they're cut to an ad break anyway. That's what some of those VT slots are actually for. I don't know the full statistics of it, but to my understanding, about half of the countries that air Eurovision have ad breaks on their broadcaster. For example, my own country has ad breaks on Eurovision, which actually leads me into a segue. But I've heard from some of my fellow Eurovision fans in Australia that they were up to 5 minutes behind the interval time in the actual broadcast. This isn't the first time that this has happened. There have been a couple of years in amongst my viewing time where I noticed that we got delayed from the live broadcast, and it was not good, because when you're trying to interact with people watching a live television show, and I'm talking about Marina Sati, Yolanda, Sylvester Belt, and Jerry Hale singing Nabate Vasamwa, and they're like, what the hell? We're missing out on this, for it to then come on 5 minutes later is not a good look. I'm going to briefly talk about the fact that I really like that instead of them being little clips now, we get full performances of the acts within the running order. I think that makes a really wonderful difference in the broadcast. Now, obviously, I think that was motivated by the fact that there are less and less countries competing every year. So to pad the semi-finals out in the time slot that they've been given a little bit, I think that's like one of the primary broadcast motivations behind moving them into a full performance slot. But I do think that it also, from a production point of view, would give the production extra rehearsals, knowing how long the Big Five and host country take to set up. For the grand final, once you get to that, they already know that, oh, shite, the United Kingdom act takes 3 minutes to set up. We've got to put them on right after a break or we're kind of screwed for production reasons. I just find this much more engaging. This is selfish as well. I don't have to take the 9 minutes to then go track down those clips and watch them. They're just in the show, and it also gives you an impression of those acts. I think that it actually puts the acts back on a little bit more of a level playing field. The backup juries, which vote, will still have to watch those performances as well. And obviously the backup juries don't count for anything unless they're San Marino in this semi-final, and thus their scores would have been just put through. But it still gives them a fair actual impression of these acts, so that when they get to Friday night and they have to vote, they've seen them in full already. I'm going to briefly talk about the qualification format change, because this year they've done it in such a different way that I was never anticipating, and I was kind of neither here nor there on it until they brought up, I believe, from left to right, I was like Portugal, Azerbaijan, and Slovenia. And I was like, damn, these are 3 countries that I thought were probable to definite non-qualifiers. And for them to then call out Portugal. Now, I'm going to compare that mentally to if they had just read out Portugal. It would have been a shock. But damn, that was a good 15 seconds of drama. I thought it was Slovenia. I'm going to be real about it. At that point in the night, I was like, okay, I think Slovenia is going to be one of the shock qualifiers. And I think they're leaving Belgium for last, because usually when Belgium qualifies, for some reason they get left to last unless they're Jeremy. He somehow was the first or second qualifier of semi-final 2 in 2022. That was also a kind of turn upside down moment, because I really thought that vocal performance was not qualifying. So now I'm kind of going to get into the non-qualifiers. Slovenia, I thought, had a really, really touching performance, and honestly, I think Clemens done what he set out to do. He put forward a really emotional, serious sequence of a performance. I wished it had qualified. It not having qualified kind of shows that good staging doesn't always give us a qualifier. It doesn't always give the audience, that we want this song through to the final. It kind of just reminds me that sometimes that very first impression you have of a song really counts for something, even if it's performed excellently. The performance did make me cry a little bit, not a tear running down my face, but I was definitely welling up. I can also see why an audience towards the end of this running order may have been pushed towards the other ballad, or the other ballad that I categorized in the semi-final. But I'm going to move on to Belgium now, which I think is going down as one of the biggest shocks in the fandom. A lot of people expected this to do really well. So for it to not have qualified is definitely something that even I didn't expect watching the performance. I thought he had done enough to make it to the final. I don't think he had done enough compared to, say, other people's expectations of Red Sebastian. Because I also had high expectations, and I didn't feel overwhelmed. I didn't feel underwhelmed. I just kind of felt whelmed. I thought that the idea of clones of him running around the stage was actually really cool. I thought that basically everything but him kind of over himself worked really well. Next non-qualifier was Azerbaijan, and I'm not surprised. Even when Azerbaijan came up in the split screens, I was like, yeah, they're not making it through. Even when it came up in the Slovenia, Portugal, and Azerbaijan split screen, I was like, they're not making it through. I was really just like, it's fine, it's there, but it really, really required multiple songs to topple over. And sure, it had a couple in its favor that toppled over, but they were snatched up by other particular acts. Croatia next, Poison Cake. Again, I just think that the song was too uneven to really be a plausible qualifier. I thought the performance was lovely, but I just thought that the song moved between the sections in a way that wasn't smooth enough. I think it's down to the compositions of the song rather than the performance. I think Marco gave it a great performance, and I think that everything that could have been done to make that a potential qualifier was indeed done. I just don't think that it hit the audience the way that it was meant to, or something like that. And I just think that also compositionally, the song was just kind of didn't bring the sections together as well as it should have. No one was expecting Poison Cake in the final either. I really liked the song when I heard it in studio. I don't think the presentation ever really brought it together as much as Marco hoped it would. And I really hope that Marco isn't discouraged from pursuing music, because I think there are some really interesting ideas in the song that if he were to continue on refining this style of music, could be really good. To me, it felt like it wanted to be a K-pop song but done vaguely Balkan-like, and I think that could honestly work really well. I would love that. So Cyprus was the final non-qualifier. When I saw that Rest of the World recap on Tuesday, I put money down on that to not qualify at really good odds. For me, what threw me off significantly was the vocal. To his credit, he got the vocal close enough to correct for the first minute or so that I thought that I should withdraw my bet. The button was saying cash out, and I was so close to pressing it. But then the second half of the performance happened, and I was kind of this wouldn't be a shock if it didn't make it, and then it ended up not making it. I think that, to a degree, it's not necessarily because it's a bad song or the staging was bad. I just think that a combination of the staging and the, everything around it made it into something that eventually non-qualified, and that's not a bad thing. That is mostly just a thing. That concludes the non-qualifiers. So Iceland qualifying, I think, happened because of Belgium not necessarily connecting with the audience as well as it could have. I do also think that Sweden and Norway, once we get votes on this, could have brought this over the line. I thought Iceland was a bit of a border qualifier, and I'm glad that it was a border qualifier in favour of making it to the final. Roa is actually one of the songs that I actually really like this year. I was happy that it made it through, even though I thought it was a border qualifier leaning towards not qualifying. And I believe I said something along the lines of, if this qualifies, it's because something else has failed, not necessarily because this one has lifted. And obviously, I'll bring that point up again. I think this profited off Belgium not being as strongly received as we all thought it would be. I honestly thought that if this qualified, Norway wouldn't, but I think that in reality, it's because Belgium didn't hit as hard as we all expected. Poland as a qualifier just makes sense. I think Justina is iconic for doing all of that at age 52, right? And I just think that as messy as the staging could have felt, she just did all of that, and I think that a lot of people can appreciate a woman who can do all of that. Estonia qualifying, this is another one where I'm yep, that was bound to happen. I'm not even surprised. I don't even have much to discuss about it. I don't really like it myself, but I think I can see why casuals really did. Ukraine's qualification, I always thought Ukraine were probably qualifying. Towards the end of the qualifier reveal, I was starting to think that they wouldn't, because it just felt like there were other big enough songs that should have been up there that hadn't been announced yet. Sometimes the curse of them doing the reveal as a random order reveal is that the final qualifier feels so obvious by the time the other 9 are out that you sort of have hope for your favourite, but you kind of think, yeah, that final qualifier is on lock. Ukraine as a final qualifier felt on lock. Like, it was very weird for Ukraine to not be one of the earlier names. I'll, like, vaguely talk about the next qualifier right now, but the fact that Sweden were one of the early names and Ukraine wasn't, I was like, well, duh, obviously Sweden's qualifying, but, like, where is Ukraine? Where is Ukraine? Ukraine's on my jumper. Like, you know, Ukraine is here. I know where Ukraine is. Oh, by the way, this jumper is a jumper that I made in 2023. Get up and model it off a little bit. But basically, like, you know, you can see like the little Ukraine flag that I've put into the design here. And yeah, I just basically make these jumpers every year, kind of to highlight the host that year. In the clip for semi-final 2, you're going to see me wearing my one for Sweden for last year. And in the grand final wrap-up video, I'm going to put on the one that I made for Switzerland. So there's that. Subscribe and put on the bell notification to see that when it comes out. Sweden is kind of like a well, duh kind of qualifier for me. Like, well, duh, of course Sweden were going to make it. It's bloody Sweden for starters. And for seconds, it's bloody Sweden, the odds-on favourite. And it's not as if their odds-on favourite is running away or anything. They are still odds-on favourite with the same percentage of winning now, even though rehearsals for semi-final 2 have definitely happened. As far as I'm aware, because I'm recording this so bloody late, the jury rehearsal for semi-final 2, the rest of the world clip's already out, and it's not as if Austria is, you know, giving up the chase in the odds, and I think that after semi-final 2 happens, at least one or two countries are going to rise up. But Sweden is still the bloody odds-on favourite and still at pretty good odds. Portugal, speaking of the odds, this is the lowest percentage chance of qualifying in the odds that have qualified since Eurovision World has been keeping track of qualifier predictions, which is, I think I've been informed, 10 years. That is crazy. And I think what it says to me, alongside the fact that 9 out of 10 of these songs had lyrics that were not in English or that were native language, and I think only one of them was all in English when English wasn't that country's native language, like, that is crazy. 10 years ago, you would have never thought it. I think there was literally a year where all of the native language songs got eliminated except for the big 5 songs. It's not that this was ever a song that I liked. It was that I knew that there were some people who really liked this song, and so I'm not necessarily surprised that it's qualified. But I am very also surprised that it managed to qualify, personally. I'm not surprised it had its audience. I'm just surprised that it's going to be in the final. But again, it's Portugal, and Portugal, I think, have been one of the nations that have had like the most impressive kind of track record of the last like 5 years of doing better than fandom expectations. Norway's Lighter is a song that, like, as much as I love it, I have had conversations with people where we have sort of realized that Norway was probably going to sail through the semi-final, and I don't know where it's going to end up. And the conversations I've been having with people have been saying that he possibly won't end up as high in the final as we expect, but he will qualify with, like, vague ease. He had his wisdom tooth scare, and if you didn't know, you couldn't tell. He performed amazingly on Tuesday night. Deserved the qualification. San Marino made it through, and I think San Marino made it through on the back of Cyprus's vague failure. I did have San Marino down as a border potential qualifier. Let me just quickly check my script, but I don't think I had it down as an actual qualifier. I did not have it down as a qualifier in my prediction video script. And the thing is, it's not that I think that it shouldn't be in the final, it's that I thought that it would get overshadowed. Turns out that my brackets were pretty correct, but some of my logic was a bit dodgy. I did say it would be about 6 of the overall overall male pop banger EDM categories. 1 of my 2 ballads qualified, and then 3 of my 4 others qualified. I just made some wrong decisions along the way. San Marino is a fine song. I don't know if it's on for San Marino's best placing. Again, they've received top 10 in the televote, but they've only come, I think it was 19th overall in 2019. I don't know if this is doing better. For San Marino, them sending an artist who hasn't been to Eurovision as the credited artist before. He's been as a composer for Halo in 2022 for Austria, but he hasn't been as a credited artist. For San Marino to actually send an artist who hasn't been credited as the performer before to qualify is actually really good. Albania is the second to last country in the running order to qualify, and frankly, of course they were going to. Jerm is just amazing. It just feels like the essence of Eurovision. The stage lighting is just brilliant. I'm pretty sure for most of the song it's divided in half and then it kind of blends towards the end, and I really love when duets do that kind of thing. The final qualifier in the running order was the Netherlands' Claude's Sylvie, and I just really am not surprised that Sylvie made it through. I'm really not. When the second technical rehearsal clip dropped, I was a little bit worried about the vocal, but at the same point in time, I remind myself that the second technical rehearsal is for the delegations to fine-tune the camera angles, to make sure their staging elements are right, to make sure the lighting does what they want it to do. It's not for us people out here to watch those clips and judge the performance as if they're final. I'm sure if I did side-by-side comparisons of some of the clips from previous years of the second technical rehearsal to their semi-final or grand final performance, you would find some major differences. C'est la vie has never really been for me. I kind of find it a little bit underwhelming personally, but I do think that Claude and the team have done some brilliant work, and I think that that's worthy of qualification. And I don't know where it's going to end up in the scoreboard, but it's definitely worth that qualification. I briefly want to touch on Spain, Italy, and Switzerland's performances. Spain's performance, I thought, started off strong, but didn't do as much as I thought it could. But I generally think that about Spain. Italy's performance was, I think, the best potential way it could have sold itself was literally to just be a plane down the line. Lucio performs a song. The subtitles are a really nice touch. Again, I don't think this song is for me, but I think it's given itself the best performance that it could have. The performance I really want to talk about out of the 3 auto qualifiers that we got to see is Switzerland. Holy shit. Even with the camera malfunction, don't get me wrong, I've seen what it should look like because that's the version of the clip that they posted up on YouTube. Switzerland's performance was stunning, amazing, spectacular, amazing. Oh my god, I don't know how it's going to do in the televote because it's not really tracking that well on any form of streaming or anything like that. But in terms of my impression of the song, holy shite. Voyage was already kind of my favorite of the big contending ballads anyway, but something happened on stage that just made me go, oh damn. I don't think it's a jury winner, but I think that it's going to do well enough that Switzerland are not going to leave behind a terrible score this year. They've already drawn their slot number 19, right? We've known that for quite a while. And they also have the advantage of being able to put the running order around them. I think that Voyage being at that point of the run, as long as you don't put anything too too close to it, so as long as they don't manage to put, say, France or Austria around it, it's 2 major jury contenders. I cannot remember what Estonia drew, but if they put, espresso macchiato next to this, I don't think that it would impact its votes or something like that. Anyway, this is not goodbye. This is I will see you tomorrow. Semi-final 2. Basically, I don't have as much to say this time. Still think that Hazel is like one of my favorite hosts ever, and dare I be controversial, as much as I love Petra Merda's 2013 hosting, I think the script has let her down for especially 2024. But with Hazel, I'm really, really pleased. I'm like, this is phenomenal. I love her so much. She is my queen of Eurovision chaos. And frankly, I feel like it's so refreshing to see a host that like can commit to the dry sense of humor. There's a couple of jokes in there that I'm like, really? Is this in the script? Especially around the alleged impartiality of the EBU and Eurovision itself. But you know what? I think that to a degree, Hazel is just one of my favorite hosts of the Eurovision, like, that I can remember. And I mean, Sandra is good, don't get me wrong, but I'm still in love with Hazel as a host of Eurovision. Intervals. Okay, I'm going to have to admit that I'm filming this very soon after semi-final 2 finished. I think that, okay, I didn't really actually get to finish watching one of them. I really needed to go to the toilet. Yeah, I used one of the interval acts as a toilet break. I'm not going to lie. I think it was the one about Swiss efficiency. I was like, you know what? As much as I can respect that this is like one of the stereotypes about Switzerland, this is a joke that I've seen before, and I really think that I didn't want to have to watch that. Considering that I knew that the other interval act that was going to happen was about 2020 artists. Now, I've heard this point said across many, many people, but I personally like wish that the acts that were brought through, that at least one of them was one of the acts that didn't get to do it in 2021. I thought John's Tears, The Roop, and Destiny were amazing choices. Effendi was a little bit out of pocket, I can't lie, but I do think Cleopatra goes harder than Matahari, so I'm kind of glad that she at least got to give a vision of that. As for like the interval around Eurovision fans, I was kind of here nor there about it. I thought, oh yeah, okay, you're just interviewing Eurovision fans and now they're conveniently at the barrier. But also, to a degree, I applaud them for actually just doing that. That, like, okay, cool, whatever. Hazel crowd surfing, amazing. I love Hazel. Can I say that enough? I love Hazel. I can't say that enough. I'm kidding. I'm still going to probably say it. I think I want to get into the songs now. Because the thing is, like, semi-final 2 is always just a little bit of like a tightened version of semi-final 1. They usually put less songs in semi-final 1 so that they can have a bigger opening act. So obviously this opening act was a little bit lower key so that we could just get into the songs. So I'm going to start with the non-qualifiers as I did on the other clip. And Australia, I'm Australian, right? But I am used to the fact that we can non-qualify in Eurovision now. Like, in 2021, it was a bit of a shock to the system, but it was like, oh, well, we didn't actually go, so we can at the very least kind of justify it that, like, we weren't on that same stage. So people probably thought of us as slightly away or different from the contest. That is what it is. We non-qualified last year, and I thought, that's weird, but I wasn't like, oh no, we can't qualify. I was like, yeah, it happens. It's happened before. This year I was a little bit like, oh, okay. Because I had Australia down as like an easy qualifier. I didn't even like debate that Australia would not qualify from the semi-final. So for us to not qualify was like a little bit of a mystery to me as to how it happened. But I've tried to like, when it comes to Eurovision results, I'm really a realist. Like, I try to justify how it's happened as quick as I can, so that way I don't get delusional or sad about it. And with Australia, I really think that we just we didn't make enough of an impression when we're up against acts like Serving or Le Poupée Mon Leçon or Ishkoma. You know, like, we didn't make enough of an impression against the other big televoting grabbing songs. And then you also have, like, you know, other songs in the mix as well. We just, obviously, and I don't know where we actually ended up in the results yet, but we obviously just missed out. somewhat. I don't think we're towards the bottom of the table, but I wouldn't be surprised if we were not 11th either. Next up was Montenegro. And again, I love Nina Žižić. I've loved Igranka literally since I watched that semi-final, that first semi-final of 2013, which was the very first broadcast show that I watched more than like 5 minutes of when channel flicking on SBS. Nina Žižić is part of my Eurovision origin story, basically. And for her to come back with a song that didn't even really win its national final, I was kind of already expecting that this wouldn't make it through. I think the last time they were in the final was in 2015. I would really like it personally if Montenegro were able to qualify for a Eurovision final at least at some point. Ireland non-qualifying doesn't necessarily surprise me. It just felt towards the end of it all, Luxembourg really surpassed it, and I think that's what took it out of the final eventually. I thought it would be like Malta and Finland taking up the vote, but I really think Les Poupées Montluçon really went really well in the semi-finals. I was like, yeah, I think this has got enough appeal to bring it through. I don't know if it's got enough appeal to do better than Tally's Fighter. Part of the hook is that it's like a reinterpretation of their 1965 entry. This is why I thought it was a non-qualifier to begin with. I have a little bit of a conflicting feeling about that. I'll get into it when I get there though. Georgia's Freedom, I'm not surprised that's not in the final. Let's just be frank about it. Like, she tried. She really tried. But like, I didn't want to pay attention. I couldn't pay attention. And it just kind of fell apart. This semi-finals, like, shock non-qualifier was Czechia. And I think it was a shock because everyone was just assuming it would sail through. But I think what happened is that really Adonis kind of, that dance break really ruined the mood of the song. Any reason to vote for it dissipated, and then when the dance break wasn't actually committed to, like when it just kind of went back to being like the same song and it never really actually committed to the change that it wanted to make, I think that was its big failing. Like, its big failing was really that it didn't have the guts to commit to the change, and it kind of just went back to what it was. And so, in my opinion, the song kind of dissipated in even my memory, like just as quickly as it started. Never a good sign when it comes to Eurovision, especially from someone who, you know, is kind of familiar enough with the entries that I've been listening to them since the middle of March. I should remember a song a lot better. I guess that also brings me to Serbia, which was kind of just also there. I did think Serbia might sneak a qualification if a couple of the more risky potential qualifiers didn't make it through. But let's speak about the qualifiers, because the very first one I get to talk about is my winner of the year, Latvia. Oh my god, thank God. Thank God Latvia made it through. Just like... Tatumatus, I love you so much. If you are perchance somehow seeing this video sometime ever, like, God tier art. Let's talk about Armenia, because I am still speechless about Latvia. ESC Gabe really did well on the Eurovision stage. Hi, Gabe. But for real, Survivor was one of those, like, it's predicted to not qualify entries that I really thought might have had wider appeal than we were all guessing that it would. It came together on stage. Austria felt like it was going to happen anyway. It's one of the 3 out of the 10 that have made it through that I'm basically like, yeah, it was going to happen. It was bound to happen. Austria was going to be in the final. One of the things that I fear when it comes to Austria's chances of winning is the fact that the camera cinematography does show that JJ doesn't actually sing those notes that no one was expecting him to be singing anyway. But I think that that is going to chip away slightly at its jury appeal. Plus, there are a couple of equally strong jury packages that I think could make it through. And I think that's where I'm really at with it. And that's like not a bad thing necessarily, but like I really think that when it comes down to the line, I think that Austria could lose some of its jury appeal. As technically brilliant as his vocal performance is, from revealing the fact on camera that he's not singing the really, really impressive high notes at the end is also like a great art package. And for those who get it, they'll get it. And those who don't, they don't. And I'm sort of in the middle. I see the appeal, but it doesn't appeal to me. Greece got through to the final. I'm happy. I'm part Greek. Greece is one of those countries that I always look out for in Eurovision. There's been a couple of times where, they've fallen short of the mark or whatever, but like, this was not one of them. I don't really love Esteromata, but I think that Klavia gave the best performance that she could. And I think that, like, really, Greece and Greeks should be happy that, something like this really works on stage when it's given the proper stage direction, because ever since Oniromu, Greece have feared bringing a traditional ballad back to the contest. Asteromata qualifying really tells the Greek broadcaster that if you do it right, it will be rewarded. Lithuania, also, if you do it right, it will be rewarded. Tavoakis is maybe not one of my favorite songs, but I understand its appeal significantly. It's grown off me as time has gone along, but it was one of my favorites in the national final. They've chosen correctly, and I really think that whatever result Lithuania get, that Catharsis making it to the final is the victory. Because what it shows to me is that this year, out of both the semifinals, the qualifiers are made up of acts that are like really genuine and deserve it. And I think like they are all genuine and definitely, like, with maybe one or two major exceptions, songs that appeal more to the artist and the personality of the artist than the public. And I think, like, that's not to say some of the non-qualifiers didn't do that. It's just to say that the Eurovision voting public will reward more quirky genres over novelty. Although sometimes, like with Malta, they might reward a bit of novelty as well. But I think that Miriana's performance style lends perfectly to the kind of pop princess diva, like Diva Not Down, serving can't. I don't know if I can even get away with that on a YouTube video. Serving singing. She was serving singing, okay? It achieved most of what she probably wanted to achieve. I don't know how well it's going to do in the final anymore, because with the audience mics turned all the way down, and I'll bring this back up when I discuss the other, it doesn't have that exact hook that it used to have, but it still has a lot going on, and it's still presented fairly well. I would like to think I was fully surprised by Denmark, but I did actually put a bet on it to qualify. I did think it was a possibility. I thought that basically for 14 of these songs, there was a possibility that they would make it through. 2 of them I kind of had thought were a little bit dead on arrival, but like the other 14, it was like a battle for those 10 slots, really. Hallucination ended up winning out, and I think that's helped by the fact that there's not that many pure pop bangers. Like, I know people were kind of, when I was watching the show, were comparing it to Euphoria, and I'm kind of like, yeah, it's like in that genre space where it's like a little bit kind of just generic pop, but also, to be fair to Cecil, she performs it really well. The notes sounded like great to my recollection. I really think that Denmark, in the broader pool of the contest, is the only pop banger from a female singer that kind of just gets on stage and does what it does. Like, even with Poland, which I think is amazing, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of things to take your attention, whereas Hallucination qualified, I think, on the strength of the song. Luxembourg had a package, and I think that's why they've managed to make it through. I didn't necessarily believe that they would until I saw the performance. And I think that's the thing. It's like the performance was good enough that I really want to stress the team have put together a really strong package that you will visually remember, and that, really, just really, it's a good package. And I think that that is what brought it through to the final. I said it before, like somewhere earlier in this video, when I was talking about, I think, Ireland. This song has a package, and I don't know if it's going to place better than Fighter, but at least there is a package involved in this song, which means that, like, to a degree, it might pick up some stray points here and there. I think that there are potentials for this song to get votes, but I just don't know how many it will get overall. Israel. I knew they were on lock for a qualification. Like, Israel and not being top 5 in the televote right now is like, they're sentences that I don't think are compatible. I don't necessarily want to talk about its winning chances, but I don't think it is one. And this is why. Compositionally, I think songs like Switzerland, Austria, France in the balladish category, and I say balladish because Austria has its ending, but like in the balladish category, are going to steal votes away from Israel because compositionally Israel's song New Day Will Rise is not the strongest. It's relying on the story to carry it through a public vote, but the thing is, to a degree, I think Esther Romata will be rewarded by a jury better than Israel's performance, especially because I've heard that there have been vocal cracks in at least 2 of the rehearsals, plus the clip that went out. I'm pretty sure there was also a vocal crack in that. It sounded like she had 1 or 2 vocal moments in the show. I don't think it's winning the show. I just think that there are too many songs in the jury vote that will take away from its potential to do well enough in a jury vote to win, just like Hurricane. Finland, if Finland did not somehow win this semi-final, if Finland did not get enough points to win this semi-final, but I think Finland won even over Austria this semi-final, it'll really depend on the final running order as to how well it does, but it was like a perfect semi-final closer. I just think that, frankly, Finland has gone through underestimation in the betting odds a little bit. I think it's got a lot better chance to win than I've seen it as low as like 29-1. And I think it's got a lot better of a chance of winning. It's been slightly underrated in the odds. Maybe not a lot, but just enough that I've noticed it. Ishkoma, it's an experience. It is made to be performed live. I like the studio track a lot, but it's definitely made to be performed live. I think it's an inside chance for top 5, really. To say it's an outside chance would be wrong. I think it's an inside chance for top 5. I think it's got enough appeal for a jury to secure upper left-hand side, so like top 7 or so. I don't know what it's going to do overall, but I do think that it has at least that going for it. Before I wrap up this video, I do need to talk about the United Kingdom, France, and Germany's performances. The United Kingdom performance was a mess. I'll say it this way. Their harmonies are great. Their solo parts are a little shaky here and there, I won't lie. As well as being part Greek, I'm part British. Don't let my dad hear me say that. I'm part Scottish. The United Kingdom in this venue does actually represent my patriarchal heritage. It does not make me feel like a flag shagger. It makes me feel like the United Kingdom are actually trying to get the most televote nulls that they can in a decade, just so that they can hold a record and keep onto it. I think some of the harmonies might attract some jury scores, but I don't know how many it's going to really get because their solo bits are not that great. I'm sure they're lovely people, and I'm sure about that for most of the competitors anyway. Their performance was not that great. France, it didn't engage me as much as I hoped it would. I think it got a little bit boring towards the end for me. I wonder if that's because I know the song and it was a presentation of the song. I don't think the sand added a lot or as much as they had hoped that it might. At this point, having seen all the performances, I think Switzerland and Austria are going to probably win a jury vote. France is going to do fairly well. I think Sweden's also up there. Yeah, I think those 4 are like fairly up there for like actually winning a jury vote. I think Sweden is probably the biggest chance for a win out of the big contenders for both the televotes and the jury votes. So there's that. Germany's performance in the semi-final was actually pretty good. There's one aspect of the song that really personally makes me a little bit on edge, and it's the timing of the cello. This is going to sound like the biggest music nerd comment that I can make, but the timing of the cello in that particular song until the final chorus, for some reason, sounds like it's like 100 milliseconds too late. I don't know if that was intentional or if my timing is off or anything, but it just felt like that was late. I'm just kind of waiting for the running order reveal. and then I'll probably make another video, yo. Thanks for watching all of this. I hope I've been informative or at least interesting. Subscribe if I have been. Like the video if I have been as well. That would be amazing. And just thank you for your time. All right. Peace out.